Well, welcome to my lab. My name is Dr. Tanja McKay, and I am an entomologist. And entomology is the study of insects, and I have been teaching here for the last 17 years at Arkansas State University. My specialty is more stored product entomology, where I study insects that attack stored grains, such as rice, but also dog heartworm. And mosquitoes are the insect that vectors, actually transmits heartworm. And I study mosquitoes and heartworm interactions. So those are kind of my research studies. But today I want to introduce to you how to collect insects. And I'll talk a little bit about our insect collection that we have here at Arkansas State University. Arkansas is fabulous when you look at all the different environments that we have. So if you're interested in collecting, you can just go in your backyard and see all the different types of insects, from really fantastic beetles that, here are just some insects that were collected this past summer. These are beetles. We have rhinoceros beetles, we have longhorn beetles, we have some dung beetles, and some really interesting carrion beetles and click beetles that you can actually pin and collect and have perhaps put in a shadow box and put it on your wall. So if you're interested, I can provide more information, but there are some techniques that you can actually do. Here are just some really interesting Luna moths. These are some of the really interesting Saturniid, which are silkworm moths that you can find at night. So these are Luna moths here. We have some Io moths. But if you look at these can come to your back lights at night. Here are a number of different moths and butterflies that we have here in Arkansas. Some of the zebra-tailed swallowtails, also some of the hawk moths that are very beautiful in coloration. Some have a really beautiful pink with a little eye that's blue. Here we actually have some other moths. These are noctuids, but they have some really beautiful coloration to them. These are actually brush-footed butterflies, some of the question mark butterflies that you might see in your backyard in the summertime. So you can collect these insects in your backyard. You can use a net. You could buy these off the internet. This is actually a sweep net. A little bit different in that it's a material that's a little bit more rigid, tarp-like, so you can sweep this into bushes and other things where it won't get tangled. But moths and butterflies, you can use another type of net called an aerial net that has more of a netting associated with it, so you can see through it. But these moths and butterflies can be collected that way. Then when you bring them back into your home, you can actually spread them. And what you do is you use insect pins that are used for pinning insects, and they are only used for pinning insects. You could buy these from insect companies that have insect collecting equipment online. That's the best way to collect, to get those types of equipment. But these pins are so designed, if you look at here they are, let's see if it picks it up. There you go. You can see that they're coated with a coating that makes them so that they don't rust. And these insects, if you preserve them correctly, pin them well, put them in a beautiful Cornell drawer, which I'll show you here in a minute. These drawers prevent other insects from coming in, but these insect pins will not rust. Do not use the ordinary sewing pins that you use for sewing and crafting. These can be used in entomological projects, such as spreading butterflies. And when we do that, here, for example, is a butterfly, is a moth that you can see that has been collected. Actually, this was collected from a student. And I'll show you here in a minute on how we can actually go about and pin this beautiful, actually it is a hawk moth. Oh, we have some other moths which we won't pin, but let's look at how we would do that. So you come here, if you can zoom that down. Usually we have a pinning block, which allows us to pin the insect at a point position on the insect pin. But I'm just going to use my fingers. And what you want is just pretty much, you want the distance of the pin to be enough so that your forefinger and your thumb can be, let's see here. So you can hold the insect by the tip. So I'm going to kind of zoom out. There you go. You can kind of see how we do that. So what we do is we have a spreading board, which this is the incorrect spreading board because these are used for more smaller moths. But what we do is this board, usually you have the abdomen, the part of the insect, which you can see here, the thorax and the abdomen, lays inside this piece of wood. So what you do is you put your insect in. If it was the correct pinning block, this whole body would actually go into the actual wooded opening of this pinning block. But what I can show you quickly what you need to do in order to make this successful in how to spread this beautiful sphinx moth. So you take a pin and some paper. You want to take some scissors and have little strips of paper that you just cut. You do not want to damage these moths and butterflies as you're spreading. Moths and butterflies have scales on their wings that can be rubbed off and you can ruin your specimen. So what you want to do is gently, with your pin, move the insect up, and you want to then pin the paper rather than pinning the wing. You don't want to put a hole in that wing. I'm not doing a really nice job here, but you can kind of get my point. Another tool that you should have is a nice set of forceps. Forceps will allow you to maneuver and manipulate the body, but a nice fine pin will allow you to spread that wing up. If I had the correct pin board, that would be good. But what you do is then you get your other piece of paper, you slide that up. But you want to really make sure that body is tucked in nicely within those grooves of your pinning board. But then, let's see here. I'm going to use some of these crafting, or actually these are also insect pins. So you do not want to put the pin through the wing, otherwise there will be a hole. Not sure where the rest of my pieces of paper are there. So then you gently bring the wing up, and you place the piece of paper on the board. There you go. We're starting the process of spreading that moth really in a nice position. I'm not doing a great job, but at least you get my point of how to go about spreading. And eventually, if you are good, like this student has done a fantastic job of putting the wings high up over the head, you can see how nicely it's the same horizontal position on both sides of the butterfly, where that body was likely in that nice groove on that spreading board. So if you're interested in spreading butterflies, get yourself a nice spreading board, some pieces of paper. You would like 4-step insect pins, and you should be well on your way. If you're interested in collecting things that have soft bodies, such as spiders, these are not insects. However, they should be preserved in alcohol. So here we have a really beautiful garden spider. Let me show you here. These are very common in the fall. So actually, in September, October, you might see these in your backyard. So this one was collected. and preserved in alcohol. You do not pin these because what will happen over time is that the spider, if you do pin, will just shrivel up on the pin. And it won't look like a beautiful beetle that we see here that is perfectly pinned. So there are different, depending upon what type of insect or arthropod that you are actually collecting, you have to have a different technique for each different insect, unfortunately, in pinning. Here are just some other insects. Actually, these are not insects, these are spiders that also have been preserved in alcohol. And we do also put a label inside to tell where it was collected, the date of when it was collected, and who collected it. These are all important parts to making sure that the label is correct so that a researcher can come in years after and determine if that insect and where that insect was collected, and perhaps have some research questions they can develop. Here you can also see some insects that have been really well labeled. On the label itself, it will say, in this particular circumstance, USA, Arkansas, this was Faulkner County, exactly the GPS coordinates or the directions to where this was collected, the date, as well as who collected it. So this is perfectly labeled. Here you can see, let me put the back to it so you can actually see how the different labels, the legs are actually beautifully spread when pinned using an insect pin. Now there are some insects that are very small and a pin would not be able to go through the thorax. So here you can see these are just mosquitoes that were collected over the last few years. There they are, you can see. A pin would not be able to go through that specimen. So what we do instead, we use a technique called pointing. And points, you can buy these again, it's just like a hole puncher, but instead it punches out beautiful points that I usually store in a glass vial. And what you do is you point, you pin the point, and here you can see how it is on the pin. So what you do is you pin the point, and using glue, just nice Elmer's glue is fine, a white glue. You put a little bit of glue on the sides, and you then put the insect on its right side, and you glue the specimen to the point. And that is a technique that's done most often with very, very small insects. Ants would be an example of the size. And some ants are quite large, but I would use the pointing technique. So moving forth into the direction over here, we have a number of other insects. So we have quite a few specimens that we've collected over the years. And our insect collection has about 80,000 specimens. And here you can see some beautiful beetles. These are tiger beetles that we've collected. Some tiger beetles, that's a bluish color to them. That's actually the color that you do see on the specimen. And even after years and years of being in the collection, for example, if I pick this one up and look at the date, this is an insect that was collected in 1980. And it was collected by AC, I can't make that out. However, in Craighead, Arkansas. So here you can see how beautiful these tiger beetles, even after being in the collection for 40 years, are still perfectly preserved. Many of our insects date back into, the collection was started in the 1960s. Dr. Harvey Barton was the entomologist here at Arkansas State University, and he taught entomology. But he started the collection, and we now have over 80,000 likely 90,000 specimens that we have in our insect collection. And we thank the students because every year when students take general entomology, insect taxonomy, they are contributing to our collection. And so this can be very important for other entomologists and scientists in the United States as well as internationally. If it's well labeled and the information is there for scientists to retrieve data, this could be very valuable for scientific purposes to see perhaps if the species diversity in an area has changed over time. So we can actually use our collections for research projects that can extend well into the future. So here are just a number of other beetles that we have. These are best beetles. And you can see the color variation. They're just pretty much the same species, but the color variation, again, this is where we can draw some, a scientist might be interested in looking at the genetics. There's possibility of taking a little clip of the last segment of the leg and doing some genetic analysis on that particular insect. So these collections are so important to keep for the years. So here are just some other beetles. This one in particular is the Asian Longhorn beetle that was from a research lab in Cape Cod that a friend of mine, a colleague, sent. But here you can see how fantastic how well they are pointed, pinned. Here you can see that's the larva, and larvae need to be kept in alcohol. But also what I like to show people coming in to look at the collection, this is another specimen. This is one of the largest beetles that we have on our planet. This is the Goliath beetle. It's from West Africa. And you can see how large that insect is. Unfortunately, the label doesn't have as much information as we would like to see. We do not know who collected this. We don't know the date to when it was collected. So these are all things that should be on a label that aren't. So pretty much it's used just for educational purposes to show how large beetles can actually get in regards to the size differences in many different beetle species.